Hi, this is Kathy from Gadget Stop 321, and in today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at the latest addition to my Swiss Army knife collection. So far, I've got my original classic that I replaced the scales on. They were cracking and falling off, and I had to replace the toothpick that I had lost, and now it is sharpened and looking like new. I also have a Rally that instead of scissors like the classic has a little Phillips screwdriver combined with a bottle cap opener and wire stripper. I keep this on a little S-beaner hanging on the inside of my purse. And I was inspired by the Urban Knife Guide to pick up a camper, a 91mm camper. He customized his with a set of aftermarket Micarta Scales, and I loved the way it turned out. So they're affordable. I picked up a pair from this company on Etsy, and there are a couple things I want to mention that he discovered after he already had them installed on his knife. And I tested it. I read the reviews, and people were saying, yeah, everything fits perfectly. But on the Urban Knife Guys, the toothpick didn't fit. And so I checked before I tried to install anything, and the little nub that is on the side of the toothpick, that kind of gives it a little friction to hold it in place, there was no room for it to fit. So I filed it off, and I was able to get it a little farther in, and then the toothpick itself was too wide. So I had used a fingernail file or an emery board to file off that little nub, and so I just filed down the sides a little bit at a time until I got it to fit. Now, on the actual Swiss Army knife, the little cutout is squared off, and these are rounded. And so I had to round off the end of my toothpick to get it to fit in there. And it's a snug fit right there, which is good. That friction is the only thing holding it in. I don't use the toothpick that much, so I'm not too worried about it being a hassle to get in and out. But on the toothpick, there's this little ramp. On the actual Swiss Army knife, even though I've shaved off a bunch of the toothpick and it's looser now, that little ramp makes it click into place. So it still works okay with the original scales. It's just this cutout doesn't have anything for that little ramp to latch onto. So it's just being held in place by friction. And so that ends up looking pretty good, and I think, well, man, it's going to be a tight fit to get it out, or a bit of a struggle to get it out. We'll see if it wears in over time and gets looser. I'm a little bit afraid of it getting looser, but the little toothpicks are fairly affordable to get replacements. Now, while I was at it, I was also inspired by Zach in the Wild. I watched him do a video where he had a slab of micarta, and he actually cut out his own scales, and he had to shape everything. And he had to cut a little notch for the pin to fit in. In the original scales, behind the corkscrew, there's a little spot to fit a pin. The pin does not come with the knife. Oh, hold on. My pin, I didn't even test this. Maybe that will fit. Yeah, it fits. It's a tight fit. I'm not going to push it all the way in there. But I'm not worried about it fitting in this one. I haven't been carrying it with the pin in it. I used a serrated steak knife to cut a little slit in there, and it was still too small, so I have a little tiny handsaw that I widened it a little bit, and I think think I left enough resistance. Yeah, that feels like it's going to fit in there nicely. All right, I don't know what I will need a straight pin for. Maybe if I get a splinter, but I'll have it. Now, the tweezers actually fit okay, and I thought, well, maybe I can swap the two. Let me see. The tweezers fit just fine, and even with the squared off bit, it's deep enough that it fits in there nicely. But you can see that the little channel cut for the toothpick, the tweezers don't fit in there. It's too narrow. So that's something to keep in mind. These are pretty affordable, especially if you get the unfinished. The unfinished in this 91mm size were $25. The finished were $35, but shipping is $12. So that's not insignificant. Keep that in mind. But I'm going to use the little trick I learned from Felix Immler. I'm going to submerge my knife in some hot water and let it kind of soften up the scales a little bit. Then I've got a little small putty knife that I'm going to kind of wedge under here in these corners and get up under the scales and pop them off. And the purpose of submerging it in hot water is hopefully you don't leave as much residue behind, and then if you want to reuse these scales at a later time, you can. While I'm over at my mom and dad's, I'm going to see if they have some oil that I can put on here, like maybe some linseed oil or some mineral oil, to kind of condition the scales and make them look nice. And my dad has a vise that I'm going to use to press the scales onto the knife. And hopefully I'll have some good results to come back and show you. Okay, I'm back. A couple of things to note. My dad's got a small vise down in his basement, and I just could not get the scales to snap on with that vise. So I noticed there beside the vise was a rubber mallet, and I remembered the Urban Knife Guy. I'm pretty sure that's what he used to get his scales on. So I just used that mallet, and I had to hit it pretty hard to get them to snap on and repeatedly go around and make sure there were no gaps. And it's looking pretty good. Now, in the reviews of this company, a lot of people said the fit was perfect. Now, you can see right here, I wouldn't call the fit perfect, but for the price, I think it's very good. You can see right there also, it's not a perfect fit, but just about every place else it is. And I had mentioned that I had to make some adjustments to my toothpick. I thought the toothpick was still going to be pretty tight. No, it's pretty loose. Now, I would say I should have left the, fiddling with the toothpick to the end, but I did widen that channel a little bit, and I was going back and forth. I was trying to widen the channel as much as I could with a fingernail file, and I would take a little bit off of the toothpick, but even right here, where it's still so loose, I can turn it upside down and shake it, and it doesn't come out. And that last little bit, there is quite a bit of friction, so I don't think I'm going to have any trouble with it wanting to come out. You can see that none of the toothpick, or the toothpick is mostly recessed, so it shouldn't get hung on anything but that's just something I'll have to pay attention to. The tweezers are a pretty nice fit. Now again, it's kind of recessed there. I've got to get my fingernail down in there, but they fit nicely. The spring of the tweezers hold it in place, and they're a nice fit. I didn't have to make any adjustments to the tweezers. Like I said, the squared off tweezers fit in that round hole nicely. And the most disappointing is my little channel that I made for holding my straight pin. Now, this straight pin is shorter than the one I was originally trying. I tried a longer straight pin, and I thought this might be an issue because on the original scales, it has its own little channel. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, there where the pin goes in. Well, there is a slight little opening there, but there's no danger of the pin getting off track. But on this, alongside my little channel, was a little rectangular cutout. So when I put the pin in, that little rectangular cutout, the pin can just move around. The rest of the channel down here, it's like I can't even feel that there's a place that it's trying to fit in. I don't know. I thought I had it sawed out nice and wide enough. There's not even it's like I'm hitting a solid wall. So that's slightly disappointing. But everything else is nice. It feels nice. My dad had some Old English that he uses on his cabinets that I went around the edges. I've already done that a couple times. I'm going to keep applying some more, let it soak up, let that canvas soak up as much oil as possible. Now, included with the scales was a piece of sandpaper. I don't know. This is 400 grit. Everything I've watched of people finishing their own micarta scales, the finishing of it was at least 600 or 800 grit. So I was afraid to start going at this with 400 grit. I might, I don't know, because I wouldn't call it rough. It doesn't feel rough. It's just unfinished, obviously. And then this is so glossy. I don't know. I wish this was a little more matte to match the matte of the sides. But I don't know how that would look if I go at it with this grit. I don't know. I'll watch some more videos and see. But I'm happy with how this turned out. And I'm loving this knife. I've been using, the tools I've been using the most are this small screwdriver, which is designed to work with Phillips head screws, and it works great. I've been painting around the house here lately, taking off a lot of outlet covers and light switch covers, and so I've been using both the flathead and the Phillips head screwdrivers. Really happy with those. The flathead has a nice half stop here, and that worked nice. I had to take off some loosened some screws behind some furniture, and that worked nicely. The Phillips side doesn't have the half stop, but that's okay. I didn't mention, but I bought this knife used on eBay, and the seller I bought it from had several not used knives for sale, several campers like this. And in the description, it just said, look at the pictures. And I went through and looked at the blades and the tools on each of the knives, and I got the one that I thought looked the best. The ones that I didn't get, I couldn't tell if the blades were scratched, or more likely, it looked more like there was just adhesive residue, like someone had used them for opening boxes. But I got the one that looked the cleanest, and when I opened it up and inspected all the tools, I don't think they had ever been used, or used very lightly. Both blades were very sharp, and the only damage to the knife was just the wear and tear on the original scales. I feel like someone bought this knife and just carried it around in their pocket and never used it. But it's got this nice size blade. It's very sharp. The only tool that I would have preferred to switch out, if I could have, would be this secondary blade, the smaller one. I would have preferred to have the file like I have on my two little knives. But even so, I guess it's nice to have a backup blade. Another tool that I'm really excited about is the saw. Whenever I'm out mowing the lawn, I've got this one little tree-like bush thing that I'm constantly trimming off branches as I'm trying to mow around it. There's always branches hanging down low. So instead of having to run to the garage and get some little clippers, this is the perfect size saw for taking off little branches. Whenever I was looking at Swiss Army knives, originally I thought, I do not want one with a corkscrew. I'll get no use out of that. But I've heard people saying that the corkscrew is good for loosening knots. That's an awesome idea, because I don't have very strong fingernails, and I don't need to loosen up knots often, but when I do, it would be nice to have something like this to help out. And the final tool is the little, I don't know if it's an awl or a reamer, or maybe it's both, but it's got the little sharp edge here where you can use it to drill a little pilot hole for a screw or something like that, and that would be handy to have. So, and this would be a nice edge for if you have a little ferro rod starting a fire. I did order a little package of fire ants to put in the corkscrew, so I'm excited about that. I think it turned out pretty nice. I'm happy with it. If you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.